The banging on my door didn't sound like a delivery, it sounded like a threat. I opened it with a spatula still in my hand, grease popping behind me on the stove, and there he was, Robert Carter, my father, standing on my porch in Marietta, Georgia, in a suit that used to fit him 7 years ago, holding a manila folder like it was a subpoena. "Alicia," he said, like he hadn't erased me. Like the last time he opened his mouth to me wasn't in a driveway in Decatur when I was 19, throwing a garbage bag of my clothes onto wet concrete and telling me, "You're a failure, and failures don't live under my roof." I hadn't seen him since. No calls, no birthday texts, not even when my grandmother died and I stood alone at that funeral because he told the rest of the family I wasn't ready to be around people yet. Before we continue, please hit that like button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story reaches. Now let's continue. Now he was standing in front of my 2-bedroom house that I bought with my own name on the deed, looking past me into my living room like he was appraising it. "I need to talk to you about some money," he said. "Family money. You owe it to me." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because if I didn't laugh, I was going to scream. "I don't owe you a single thing, Robert." His jaw tightened at the sound of his first name coming out of my mouth instead of Daddy. He wasn't used to that. He wasn't used to me having a spine. He slid the folder toward me anyway. $211,000, he said. "That's what I need, and you're going to help me get it. I want you to understand something before this story goes any further. I did not slam that door. I stood there, in my own doorway, in the house I built after he threw me away, and for the first time in 7 years, I let him see my face while I decided exactly how far I was willing to let this go. Not far at all. To understand why my father thought he could show up on my porch after 7 years of silence and demand 6 figures, you have to understand the house I grew up in. There were 3 of us kids under Robert Carter's roof in Decatur. Me, my younger brother Malik, and for a few years, my mother Yvonne, before she passed from a heart condition when I was 14. After she died, my father remarried fast, 11 months fast, to a woman named Denise Holloway, who moved into my mother's kitchen and started rearranging the cabinets before the sympathy casseroles were even finished. Malik was 2 years younger than me, and from the day he was born, he was the son my father bragged about at church, at the barber shop, at family reunions in Stone Mountain Park. Malik made honor roll, my father told everybody. Malik got a scholarship offer for football, my father told everybody twice. When Malik got 2 girls pregnant in the same semester at Clark Atlanta and dropped out, my father told nobody, and instead paid for both situations quietly, calling it a young man finding his way. When I got a partial scholarship to study accounting at Georgia State, my father said, "Don't get too big for yourself." When I brought home a 3.8 GPA, he said nothing. When I missed 1 shift at my part-time job because I had the flu and got written up, he sat me down at that same kitchen table Denise had claimed and said the words that would define the next 7 years of my life. "You're a failure, Alicia. You've always been a disappointment next to your brother." I was 19. I believed him for exactly 1 year. Then I stopped. The night he threw me out started over $40. I'd borrowed it from Denise's purse to buy textbooks, planning to pay it back from my next paycheck 2 days later. I left a note. I thought that made it okay. Denise didn't think so. She stormed into my room that Friday night, waving the $40 like I'd robbed a bank, and my father came up right behind her, already worked up from something at his job I didn't know about yet. "You steal from this family," he said, "after everything I do for you?" I left a note. I was going to. "I don't want to hear it." He was already pulling my clothes out of my dresser, stuffing them into a black garbage bag like I was trash he was taking to the curb. Malik stood in the hallway watching, saying nothing, his face unreadable. "Robert, please," I said, and it came out smaller than I wanted it to. "It's raining." "Then you better walk fast." He carried the bag downstairs himself and threw it onto the driveway, where it split open on the wet concrete, my clothes soaking into the pavement under the porch light. Denise stood in the doorway with her arms crossed, satisfied. My father looked at me one last time. "You're a failure, and failures don't live under my roof." I was 19 years old, standing in the rain in my socks, calling my best friend Tanya Briggs with a shaking hand, asking if I could sleep on her couch. She didn't ask a single question. She just said, "Come on, girl, I got you." That was the last conversation I had with my father for 7 years. Not one card, not one call on my birthday, not one word when my grandmother, his own mother, passed away 18 months later, and somehow the family forgot to tell me the funeral had been moved up 2 days. I built my entire adult life out of that driveway, and he thought he could walk back into it holding a folder. I let him into my living room because Tanya, who I called the second his car pulled away that first day just to steady my nerves, told me one thing: get everything on record before you say no. People like him lie about what they asked for. So 3 days later, he came back, and this time I had my phone recording in my shirt pocket. "Walk me through it," I said, arms crossed, standing instead of sitting. 211,000. For what? He sighed like I was the one being unreasonable. I co-signed on a business loan for a friend, Charles Devereaux. Barbershop chain, 3 locations. He defaulted. Banks coming after me for the balance, and they're threatening to take the house. Your house, growing up. Denise's house now too. That's not my house anymore. Hasn't been in 7 years. It's still family. You made it very clear I wasn't family anymore, Robert. You said it in the driveway. You said it with a garbage bag. His face flickered. Not with guilt, I'd learn later, but with irritation that I'd remembered it so precisely. I was disciplining you. That's what fathers do. You abandoned me. That's what you did. My voice was steady, which surprised even me. And now you need money, so I'm your daughter again? You've got a good job. Senior accountant, I heard. Nice house. New car in the driveway. He looked around my living room again, that same appraising look from the porch. I raised you. I fed you 18 years. You owe me 18 years back. I felt something crack open in my chest. Not sadness. Something colder. Something clearer. "Get out of my house, Robert!" "Alicia, get out." He left, but not before saying 5 words over his shoulder that I would replay in my head for the next 2 weeks. "You'll regret this, Alicia." I didn't know yet how right he was going to try to make himself. 2 weeks of silence followed. I almost let myself believe it was over. Then Tanya called me at work, her voice tight in a way I'd never heard before in the 11 years I'd known her. "Alicia, you need to sit down. I'm sending you something." It was a photo of a letter, a collections notice, addressed to me, Alicia Yvonne Carter, for a defaulted business loan of $211,000, co-signed under my name, dated 4 years ago. 4 years ago, I hadn't spoken to my father in 3 years already. I called the bank listed on the letter, First Piedmont Credit Union, my hands shaking so badly I had to set the phone down on my desk and use speaker. The loan officer, a woman named Renata Coleman, pulled the file after I gave my social security number to verify identity. "Ma'am," she said slowly, "this loan was co-signed in person at our Decatur branch on March 14th, 4 years ago. Your signature's on file." I have never been inside that branch in my life. There was a long pause. "I'm going to flag this account for fraud review immediately." I hung up and sat in my office chair, staring at my computer screen without seeing it, doing math I didn't want to do. 4 years ago, I hadn't spoken to my father, but I also hadn't changed my social security number, my date of birth, or the signature that was still on file from a debit card I'd left behind at that house when I was 19. He hadn't just abandoned me on that porch 7 years ago. Somewhere in the years since, my own father had used my identity, my name, my credit, to co-sign a debt for a stranger's barbershop chain. And now he was standing on my porch, acting like I owed him. I didn't cry. I opened my laptop and started a folder of my own. My brother Malik showed up at my job 4 days later, which was the first time I'd seen him in 7 years without our father standing beside him. He looked older, tired in a way that surprised me. Not the golden boy from the family photos anymore, just a 30-year-old man in a wrinkled polo, waiting by my car in the parking garage. "I'm not here for him," he said quickly, hands up like I might swing on him. "I'm here because I need to tell you something, and I couldn't say it around Denise." I stood by my driver's door, keys between my fingers like a small weapon, and let him talk. Dad's business with Charles Devereaux wasn't a loan he co-signed for a friend, Malik said. Dad was the business. Devereaux was a front. Dad was skimming money out of 3 barbershops for 2 years, and when the bank started asking questions, he needed a clean name to put the paper trail on. Somebody who wasn't around to say no. "Me. You," Malik said, and for the first time in our whole lives, I saw something like shame on his face. I found out 6 months ago. I confronted him. He told me to mind my business, or he'd cut me off too, same as you. I've been sending you money anonymously for the collections notices since then, the ones you probably thought were errors that resolved themselves. I remembered 3 strange small deposits over the past few months that I'd assumed were bank corrections. I'd never questioned them. "Why are you telling me now?" Malik's jaw tightened, the same tightening I remembered from our father. "Because he's about to sue you. He's telling Denise's cousin, who's a paralegal, that you owe him, and he's filing a civil claim to force repayment, framing you as the one who defaulted." The parking garage felt very quiet. "He's going to sue his own daughter," I said, "for a debt he committed fraud to put in her name." "Alicia," Malik said, "I'm done protecting him. I'll testify to what I know. I should have done it 7 years ago, honestly. The night he threw you out, I just watched. I'm sorry I just watched. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a start of something." I hired an attorney named Patricia Ashworth, a sharp, no-nonsense woman recommended by a coworker who'd gone through her own identity theft case 2 years prior. Patricia's office was small, tucked above a dry cleaner in downtown Decatur, but her reputation in fraud litigation was airtight. "This is textbook identity fraud committed by a family member," she said, reading through the bank documents I'd gathered, the recorded conversation from my living room, and Malik's written statement, which he'd given voluntarily and signed without hesitation. "Banks see this constantly, with parents and adult children. The fact that he's now threatening a civil suit to recover the debt from you directly, that's almost reckless on his part. It hands us intent. What happens to him? Depending on how the DA's office wants to run this, bank fraud is federal. Identity theft against a family member, on top of using forged documents to secure over $200,000, is not a slap on the wrist. He's looking at real time, Alicia. Years, potentially." I sat with that for a long moment. Part of me, the 19-year-old girl standing in the rain with a split garbage bag, wanted to feel something like triumph. Instead, I felt hollow, tired, like grief for a father I'd never actually had. "There's something else," Patricia said, sliding another document across the desk. "First Piedmont's fraud division already opened an internal investigation once you reported it. They've frozen the account and are cooperating fully. Your credit will be fully restored once the fraud claim clears. Could take a few months, but it's a formality at this point. You are not liable for 1 cent of this debt. And if he files that civil suit anyway?" Patricia almost smiled. "Then he files a fraudulent claim against a woman he committed felony identity theft against, on the record, with a signed witness statement from his own son. Let him file it, Alicia. Please, let him." For the first time since that knock on my door, I actually laughed. Real laughter, not the bitter kind. Let him, I repeated. He filed anyway. I think, somewhere in that suit he still wore like armor, he genuinely believed I'd fold the way I used to at 19, that I'd write a check just to make the discomfort stop, the way I'd once apologized for taking $40 I'd already left a note about. The civil summons arrived by courier on a Tuesday. I remember because I was on a video call with a client when it happened, and Tanya, who'd stopped by to drop off my niece's birthday gift, signed for it and set it on my counter without a word, her face saying everything. I called Patricia. She'd already been expecting it. "This is good news," she said, which felt insane to hear, until she explained. "He's now made a sworn legal claim, under his own signature, asserting you owe a debt from a loan he fraudulently placed in your name. That statement alone, cross-referenced with the bank's fraud investigation and Malik's testimony, is enough for us to file a countersuit and forward everything to the Fulton County DA's fraud unit simultaneously." 3 weeks later, First Piedmont's internal investigation concluded. The forged signature didn't match any documented signature of mine on file anywhere. Not my driver's license, not my employment records, not even a decade-old library card. It matched, instead, a shaky attempt at cursive that a handwriting analyst hired by the bank noted shared structural similarities with a signature already on file under a different account. Robert Carter's own signature from a different loan taken out under his own name 11 months earlier, the one that had actually defaulted first. He hadn't found some clever forger. He'd tried to fake my handwriting himself, badly, alone, at his own kitchen table, and hoped nobody would ever check. I didn't want to go to the criminal proceedings. Patricia said I didn't have to. The DA's office had more than enough with the bank's forensic findings and Malik's statement. But Tanya told me something the night before that changed my mind. "You spent 7 years wondering what you'd say to him if you ever got the chance," she said. "Don't let him take that from you too." So I went. Denise wasn't there. I heard through Malik that she'd filed for divorce the week the fraud charges became public, taking what she could before his accounts were frozen for restitution. Malik sat 2 rows behind me, present but not beside me yet. We were still finding our way back to each other, slowly, honestly. Robert looked smaller in that courtroom than he had on my porch. His attorney tried to frame it as a misunderstanding between family, a father managing finances on behalf of a daughter he claimed he still had informal authority over even after estrangement. The prosecutor read the driveway story back to him, plainly, from Malik's sworn statement. The garbage bag, the rain, the words failure, and you don't live under my roof, and asked how a man claims informal financial authority over a daughter he'd disowned in the rain 7 years earlier. Robert had no answer that held up. When it was my turn to speak during sentencing, I stood, and I looked directly at him for the first time since that porch. "You told me failures don't live under your roof," I said, my voice even, steady, nothing like the girl in the driveway. "You were right. I don't live under your roof. I built my own, and I built it without 1 cent of your money, your name, or your permission, until you tried to steal all 3. He was sentenced to 4 years, with restitution ordered to First Piedmont and a formal record clearing my name entirely. I didn't feel joy walking out of that courthouse. I felt something quieter, something like weight finally leaving my shoulders after 7 years of carrying it without knowing. It's been 8 months since that courtroom. My credit is fully restored. First Piedmont sent a formal letter of apology, along with a settlement for the stress and financial disruption, which I put straight into a savings account labeled, only half-jokingly, reparations. Malik and I have dinner every other Sunday now, slowly rebuilding something that was never really given the chance to exist properly the first time. He's in therapy, so am I. We don't talk about our father much, but when we do, there's no more protecting him between us. Just 2 adults who survived the same house and are figuring out how to be siblings without a man standing between us keeping score. Denise moved to Alabama after the divorce finalized. I don't think about her often. My father writes me letters from a facility in Jackson County. I haven't opened one. Patricia said I'm under no obligation to, and for the first time in my life, I'm allowing myself the plain, unremarkable comfort of simply not being obligated to somebody who hurt me. Tanya still has the key to my house, same as she's had since the night I showed up on her doorstep in wet socks at 19 years old, with nothing but a busted garbage bag of clothes and no plan. She jokes now that she called it, that she always knew I'd end up fine, better than fine, standing on my own 2 feet in a house nobody can throw me out of. She's right. I built this house with my own name on the deed, my own money, my own 2 hands pulling myself up after a man who was supposed to protect me instead threw me into the rain and called it discipline. He came back 7 years later, expecting a girl who still flinched at his voice. He found a woman who didn't. And that, more than any courtroom verdict, is the ending I actually wanted. Thanks for spending your time with me today. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe for more incredible stories, and comment your favorite part, or simply let me know where you're watching from. Until next time, take care and see you in the next one.